As new video tonight in the deadly shooting of a Riverside County Sheriff's deputy, and we now know who allegedly shot Deputy Calhoun. KCAL News reporter Michelle Geely has the very latest.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.
January 13th, 2023. Lake Elsinore, California. A quiet neighborhood turned crime scene. A peace officer, Deputy Darnell Calhoun, was shot and killed, his life taken in an instant, but the story that followed, well, that's what has captivated the public's attention ever since. Deputy Calhoun was a man of honor, a man who dedicated his life to protecting others. But on that night, everything changed. He walked into a routine call for help, only to face a killer waiting for him in the shadows. The suspect, 45-year-old Jesse Cesar Navarro, fired the fatal shot. A man with no apparent motive, but there was something deeper at play, something that would soon unfold in the courtroom and shock the public in ways no one saw coming. As the investigation into Navarro's actions began to unfold, the world learned of a chilling reality. Navarro wasn't just a man who committed murder, he was playing a much darker game. It wasn't just the life of Deputy Calhoun that was on the line anymore. Navarro's fate, and the very justice system, had been placed in a deadly, high-stakes gamble. He stands accused of murder, but there's something more to this story than what's been laid out in the police reports. Something that raises the question, is Navarro playing the system, pretending to be mentally incompetent to avoid the consequences of his actions? The courtroom will soon determine whether his strategy succeeds. But behind the legal arguments, the question remains, who is Jesse Navarro really? And what lengths will he go to escape the consequences of his crime? Is Navarro simply a man who lost control in a moment of rage? Or is he a cold and calculating manipulator, using the system's flaws to rewrite his fate? And in the midst of all this, the story of Deputy Darnell Calhoun, his life, his legacy, remains at the heart of it all. In the coming months, the world will watch as the truth of that night unfolds. But the question remains, will the truth be enough to bring justice to Deputy Calhoun's family, or will Jesse Navarro's plan be enough to save him from the death he so rightly deserves? On January 13, 2023, in Lake Elsinore, California, the quiet suburban streets, typically home to families and a sense of calm, turned into the backdrop of an unimaginable tragedy. It was a day that would forever alter the lives of those who knew Deputy Darnell Calhoun and shake the community he had dedicated himself to protecting. Deputy Calhoun, a 30-year-old father and husband, was called to a domestic violence situation at a home on the outskirts of town. It seemed like a routine call, something law enforcement officers respond to daily. But this time, it was different. This time, the call would lead to the loss of a beloved officer's life. Jesse Cesar Navarro, 45, the man accused of the crime, had no apparent criminal record that would have raised suspicion. Yet, as soon as Deputy Calhoun arrived on the scene, Navarro opened fire without hesitation. The shooting was swift, deliberate, and ruthless. Calhoun was struck, collapsing almost instantly. Despite efforts from other deputies to save him, Calhoun's injuries were fatal. He was rushed to the hospital but could not be revived. Navarro didn't run. He didn't try to hide. Instead, he remained at the scene, almost eerily calm, as if the brutal act had been a premeditated move in a carefully planned game. But what led to such violence? What could possibly drive a man to kill in cold blood? Navarro's actions didn't seem to be those of someone reacting in the heat of passion or anger. Witnesses reported that, in the midst of the chaos, Navarro remained eerily composed. He fired at Deputy Calhoun without a moment's hesitation and even targeted another deputy who attempted to come to Calhoun's aid. It was clear this wasn't a random act of violence, it was a calculated, deliberate attack. As law enforcement arrived and began processing the scene, one thing became apparent: Navarro wasn't just a man who had snapped in a moment of rage. No, this was something much deeper. Something that, in the coming months, would unravel a twisted tale of deception, manipulation, and a man willing to do anything to avoid the consequences of his actions. So, as the blood spilled that night, so did the mystery of Jesse Navarro's true intentions. Was he a man driven to madness, his mind fractured by something beyond his control? Or was he, in fact, a cold, calculating killer who sought to escape punishment by any means necessary? The question loomed in the air, unanswered, leaving those who witnessed the tragedy to wonder, what was behind Navarro's chilling calm? The hunt for answers would soon begin, setting the stage for an intense legal battle that would captivate the nation. Jesse Cesar Navarro was born into a troubled household, where tension, anger, and instability were ever present. His early years were marked by a volatile relationship between his parents, filled with arguments and emotional turmoil. His mother, who tried her best to hold the family together, found herself increasingly overwhelmed by his father's unpredictable behavior. This environment, which lacked the comfort of a stable home, shaped Navarro in ways that would later become evident. From an early age, Jesse showed signs of aggression, often acting out in school and showing little regard for authority. Growing up, he had several run-ins with the law. Minor offenses, nothing that would have predicted the tragedy that was about to unfold. But there were patterns. Arguments with neighbors, domestic disputes that ended with police intervention, these were all part of Navarro's history. He never seemed to escalate beyond verbal outbursts or physical intimidation, but those who knew him began to notice something darker beneath the surface. Family members recalled incidents where his short temper led to violent outbursts, yet he always seemed to get a pass. His relationship with authority was strained. Navarro didn't trust law enforcement, and that distrust seemed to breed an unhealthy resentment. As he grew older, the cracks in his psyche began to widen, setting the stage for the violent act that would ultimately define his life. But was this all just the result of his upbringing, or was there something deeper? Something more sinister at play in his mind? The answer, as the case unfolds, would become clearer, and more disturbing. It was a typical Friday evening in Lake Elsinore when Deputy Darnell Calhoun received the call. A domestic violence situation was unfolding at a house on the outskirts of town. As he pulled up to the scene, dashcam footage from his patrol car captured the stillness of the neighborhood, the tension in the air almost palpable. Calhoun stepped out of his car, unaware of the deadly encounter that was about to take place. Suddenly, gunfire shattered the silence. The crack of a gunshot echoed through the street, and within moments, Calhoun was struck. He collapsed in a heap, his lifeblood spilling onto the pavement. Navarro, cold and composed, didn't hesitate. He fired again, targeting another deputy who had rushed to assist Calhoun. The scene was chaos, sirens, shouts, the pounding of feet as deputies scrambled for cover. But Navarro remained eerily calm, standing amidst the madness, as though he had carefully planned every move. Calhoun was rushed to the hospital, but despite all efforts to save him, he succumbed to his injuries. The loss of a dedicated officer sent shockwaves through the community. Navarro, however, showed no signs of remorse. His actions suggested something far more calculated than a spontaneous act of rage. The brutality of the attack raised a chilling question: was Navarro truly out of control, or had he carefully orchestrated this deadly encounter? The courtroom became the battleground for the fate of Jesse Navarro, and it wasn't just his life on the line, it was the integrity of the justice system itself. Deputy District Attorney Marcus Garrett was determined to ensure that Navarro didn't escape the consequences of his actions. Garrett presented compelling evidence, emphasizing Navarro's behavior in jail, where he was able to multitask, communicate clearly, and display an awareness of his surroundings. He argued that Navarro's actions were not the result of mental illness, but of a calculated strategy to manipulate the system. To Garrett, this was a man who knew exactly what he was doing, pretending to be mentally incompetent to avoid the death penalty. On the other side, the defense team painted a different picture. They argued that Navarro had suffered significant brain damage after being shot, with bullet fragments lodged in his head. They claimed this had caused severe cognitive dysfunction, making it impossible for him to fully comprehend the gravity of his actions. The courtroom grew tense as the defense introduced a forensic psychologist who evaluated Navarro and concluded that he was, in fact, competent to stand trial. As the arguments raged, the question that lingered in the air was far more than a legal one, it was deeply human. Is Navarro truly mentally ill? Or is he simply a man desperate enough to do anything to avoid the consequences of his actions? The audience could feel the weight of this uncertainty, torn between the logic of both sides, unsure of whether to pity or condemn him. As the trial unfolds, it's important to pause and remember the man at the heart of this story, the one who was taken too soon. Deputy Darnell Calhoun wasn't just a police officer. He was a devoted family man, a husband, and a father who dedicated his life to protecting the community he loved. Friends and colleagues describe him as warm, approachable, and deeply committed to his work. He was the kind of man who put others before himself, always willing to go the extra mile to ensure the safety and well-being of those around him. Calhoun's colleagues spoke of him with admiration, recounting stories of his dedication to his job and his genuine care for the people he served. But beyond the badge, it was his family that truly defined him. Calhoun's wife and children were his world. He made every effort to balance the demanding nature of his job with being present for his loved ones. His loss has left a hole not only in the law enforcement community but in the hearts of those who knew him. As the courtroom drama continues, it becomes clear that this case is about far more than a murder trial. It's about the tragic death of a man who gave everything for his community, and the cold, calculated actions of the killer who took his life. While Navarro plays his game, those left behind struggle to make sense of a senseless act. The investigation into Deputy Calhoun's murder began almost immediately after the shooting. Forensic experts quickly moved in, collecting evidence from the crime scene, shell casings, gunpowder residue, and any trace that might reveal more about Navarro's actions. The ballistics report confirmed that the shots fired at Calhoun were deliberate and precise. The autopsy findings painted a grim picture, revealing the extent of the damage caused by the gunfire, with Calhoun's fatal injury clearly linked to the direct attack. As the investigation continued, a disturbing discovery emerged: Navarro had been planning the murder of Deputy Calhoun in advance. Evidence from his home and previous interactions with law enforcement indicated that this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Eyewitness testimonies corroborated this, painting a picture of Navarro's calculated behavior leading up to the shooting. Interviews with law enforcement officers involved in the case highlighted their frustration. Calhoun's murder was not just an attack on an officer, it was a violation of the trust and safety they swore to uphold. Their determination to see justice done was palpable, but the more they uncovered, the more they questioned Navarro's sincerity about his mental state. His feigned incompetence, it seemed, was just another part of the game he was playing. As the trial continued, the issue of the death penalty loomed large. California's stance on capital punishment sparked heated debates in the courtroom. Prosecutors argued that Navarro's calculated actions warranted the ultimate punishment, death. But the defense, highlighting his possible mental instability, questioned whether he should be subjected to such a fate. The audience is left to grapple with a moral dilemma: should Navarro face the death penalty for taking a life, or would a life sentence in prison be more fitting for someone whose mental state remains uncertain? The question of justice now seemed as complicated as the man at its center. As the case of Jesse Navarro gained traction, public outcry swept across the nation. Social media exploded with opinions, memes, and hashtags, dividing people between those demanding justice for Deputy Calhoun and those questioning Navarro's mental state. Protests took place outside courthouses, with signs calling for accountability and the death penalty. The case also sparked a national conversation on mental illness, particularly its role in criminal behavior and whether it should influence legal outcomes. Interviews with Calhoun's family revealed the devastating impact of the loss. His wife, children, and colleagues spoke of their heartache, struggling to understand how Navarro could have taken someone so dedicated to protecting others. Community members expressed their disbelief and pain, grappling with the senselessness of the crime. Navarro's actions had shaken the community to its core, leaving everyone searching for answers that seemed just out of reach as the case continued to unfold. Just as the trial seemed to be reaching its conclusion, a breakthrough came. A previously hidden piece of footage surfaced, showing Navarro in a private moment, revealing details that had been overlooked. This footage shifted the entire course of the trial. The final revelation came as a shock. It was revealed that Navarro's mental state, previously debated in the courtroom, was far more complicated than anyone had realized. The true reason behind his actions was linked to a combination of past trauma and a deliberate manipulation of his condition. This emotional turning point left everyone questioning the true nature of Navarro's guilt and his role in Deputy Calhoun's death. As the trial neared its end, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. The final arguments were made. Prosecutor Marcus Garrett spoke passionately, pushing for justice and the ultimate punishment for Navarro, while the defense clung to the argument of mental incompetence, hoping for a lighter sentence. Each side made their case, presenting their final pieces of evidence with intensity, knowing that the fate of Jesse Navarro hung in the balance. As the jury deliberated, the air was thick with uncertainty. Would justice prevail, or had Navarro managed to manipulate the system one final time, escaping the consequences of his actions? In the end, the case raised a profound question: what makes a killer? How far will the legal system go to ensure justice is served when faced with someone who is willing to play the system to avoid responsibility? Stay tuned as we follow the conclusion of Jesse Navarro's trial. Will he escape justice, or will Deputy Darnell Calhoun's sacrifice finally be honored? The answer lies in the hands of the jury, but it's clear, this case is far from over.
Welcome to Shocking True Crime. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily updates on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe.